I was wrapping up some work emails when my phone rang. It was my wife calling from her monthly girls' night at our neighbor's house. I could hear the wine-fueled laughter in the background before I even answered. "Hey, what's up?" I said, thinking maybe she needed me to pick something up or had forgotten her keys. But instead of a normal conversation, her voice came through loud and theatrical. Ladies, quiet down. I'm about to do something that's been a long time coming." That's when I realized I was on speakerphone. The laughter died down, and I could practically feel a room full of women leaning in to listen. "Honey," she said, drawing out the word like she was performing on stage. "I've been thinking a lot lately, and I've made a decision. We're done. Forever. This marriage is over." The silence on both ends was deafening. Then came the gasps and, "Oh my God," reactions from her audience. I could hear someone whisper, "Is she serious right now?" For a moment, I just sat there processing what had just happened. My wife of 7 years had just announced our divorce like it was entertainment for her friends. This wasn't the first time she'd used our relationship as material for her social gatherings, but this was definitely the most extreme. I'd grown tired of being the punchline in her stories. The husband who allegedly couldn't load the dishwasher right, who supposedly didn't understand her emotional needs, who was apparently too boring for her sophisticated tastes. Her friends would laugh, and she'd bask in the attention. But this was different. This was her publicly humiliating me for sport. The room was waiting for my reaction. They probably expected me to beg, to ask what was wrong, to give them more drama to feast on. That's what she was counting on. Instead, I kept my voice calm and professional. "Understood. Take care." And I hung up. The house fell completely quiet. I set my phone face down on the desk and went back to my emails like nothing had happened. But inside, I was already planning my next moves. You see, when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them. And my wife had just shown me exactly how much respect she had for our marriage and for me as a person. I opened my laptop and started with the banking apps. We had separate accounts, but she had a card connected to mine that she used for her shopping trips and those expensive girls' nights. Her mother also had access to one of my cards for emergencies and her weekly grocery runs. Within 20 minutes, I'd canceled both cards and removed their access to my accounts. I changed my passwords and set up new security questions. Then I called my bank and put a hold on any attempts to add new authorized users. My phone started buzzing with text messages, but I ignored them. I had more important things to handle. Next, I logged into our shared Netflix, Spotify, and Amazon accounts. Changed all the passwords. Removed her profiles. If she wanted entertainment, she could pay for her own. I even canceled the premium cable package she insisted we needed for her reality TV shows. Basic cable would do just fine. By the time I finished, it was nearly midnight. My phone had been buzzing constantly, but I hadn't looked at it once. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. I went to bed that night feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time in years, I'd stood up for myself without arguing, without explaining, without begging for respect. She'd wanted to end our marriage for entertainment value. Fine. But she was about to learn that actions have consequences, and I wasn't the doormat she thought I was. The next morning was going to bring some very unpleasant surprises for both her and her mother. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I was having my morning coffee and checking the news when my phone exploded with calls. The first few were from my wife, which I let go to voicemail. Then came the call I was actually expecting. "Hello." I answered, recognizing her mother's number. "What did you do?" She practically screamed into the phone. My card was declined at Target. The cashier had to void my entire transaction in front of everyone. "Good morning to you too," I said calmly, taking another sip of coffee. "Don't you dare take that tone with me. The credit cards. Dear Lord, what did you allow him to do?" I could hear her talking to someone else in the background, probably my wife. "She's asking what happened to the accounts. She ended our marriage last night. Publicly. For entertainment." So I simply took her at her word and acted accordingly. There was a stunned silence. Then I heard muffled arguing in the background before her mother came back on the line. "She says it was just girl talk. You can't just cut off family like that. I'm not family anymore, remember?" She made that very clear to a room full of people. Now she gets to experience what that actually means. I hung up and immediately blocked both their numbers. My phone showed 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, but I wasn't interested in any of it. Around noon, she showed up at the house. I watched through the window as she tried her key in the front door, then saw her confused expression when it didn't work. I'd had the locks changed first thing that morning. She started pounding on the door. I know you're in there. We need to talk. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. She looked terrible. Her makeup was smudged, her hair was a mess, and she was wearing the same clothes from last night. What is wrong with you? She demanded. You've humiliated me in front of everyone. I've humiliated you. I almost laughed. You announced our divorce to a room full of people like it was a comedy show. You humiliated yourself. It wasn't serious. The girls were talking about their relationships, and things got heated. I just got caught up in the moment. Right? So our 7-year marriage is just something you get caught up about when you need material for your friends. She tried to push past me into the house, but I stepped back and started closing the door. You can't keep me out of my own home. This is my house. My name is on the deed. You wanted out of this marriage, so you're out of everything that comes with it. But where am I supposed to go? My mother is furious with me. I can't afford my own place right now. Sounds like you should have thought about that before your little performance last night. The tears started flowing, but they felt calculated. She'd used crying to manipulate me for years, and I wasn't falling for it anymore. Please, just let me come inside so we can talk about this like adults. Adults don't publicly humiliate their spouses for laughs. Adults don't treat their marriage like reality TV. We're way past talking. But I love you. Last night didn't mean anything. Last night meant everything. It showed me exactly how you see me and this marriage. Thank you for the clarity. I started to close the door, but she jammed her foot in the way. You're being ridiculous. Just because I said some things when I was drinking doesn't mean I want a divorce. You didn't just say some things. You put me on speakerphone and announced to a room full of people that our marriage was over forever. Those were your words, not mine. Fine. I'm sorry. There, I apologized. Now let me in. The entitlement in her voice was staggering. Like a simple apology could undo public humiliation. An apology doesn't fix this. You chose to end our marriage as entertainment for your friends. I'm simply honoring your decision. This is insane. You can't just decide our marriage is over because of one stupid comment. I didn't decide anything. You did. Last night. In front of witnesses. I'm just the one taking it seriously. She finally moved her foot, and I closed the door. Through the window, I watched her stand there for another 10 minutes, alternating between crying and yelling at the closed door. When she finally left, I went back to my coffee and opened my laptop. I had an appointment with a lawyer scheduled for tomorrow morning. My phone buzzed with another block number trying to call, probably one of her friends trying to mediate. But there was nothing to mediate. She'd made her choice publicly and dramatically. Now she was learning that actions have consequences, and not everything can be fixed with tears and apologies. The funny thing was, I felt more at peace than I had in years. The lawyer's office was exactly what I expected. Professional, quiet, and expensive. But after 7 years of marriage, I knew what I was dealing with and wanted everything done properly. So she announced the divorce publicly. And you're taking her at her word? The attorney reviewed my notes while sipping his coffee. Exactly. I want a clean separation of assets. No joint debts, no shared responsibilities. She wanted out, so she gets out completely. Any children or shared property concerns? No kids. The house is in my name only. Both cars are in my name. She has her personal belongings and whatever's in her individual checking account, which last I knew was about $200. He raised an eyebrow. She doesn't work? Part-time retail job at the mall. Maybe 15 hours a week. She's always said my income was enough for both of us. Well, that's about to change. I left the office feeling confident about my position. Everything was documented, recorded, and filed properly. No room for misunderstandings or manipulation. When I got home, she was waiting by my car in the driveway. She'd clearly put effort into her appearance today. Full makeup, nice dress, the works. The manipulation playbook was in full swing. We really need to talk, she said, stepping closer. I've been thinking about everything, and I realize how wrong I was. There's nothing to talk about. I have a meeting with my attorney this afternoon to finalize the paperwork. Her face went white. Attorney? You're actually serious about this? You announced our marriage was over forever. I believed you. Why wouldn't I be serious? She tried a different approach, reaching out to touch my arm. Baby, I was drunk. The girls were being dramatic about their own relationships, and I got caught up in it. You know how it is with wine and group mentality. I stepped back from her touch. So you're saying you only disrespect me when you're drinking with friends? That's supposed to make me feel better? That's not what I meant. Frustration crept into her voice. I meant that I wasn't thinking clearly. People say things they don't mean all the time. Not about their marriage. Not on speakerphone. Not for entertainment. She tried tears next. Right on schedule. Please don't do this to us. We can work through this. Maybe couples counseling. There is no us anymore. You ended that last night, remember? I didn't mean it. But you said it. Publicly. Dramatically. With an audience cheering you on. The tears stopped abruptly, replaced by anger. You're being completely unreasonable. It was one mistake. No, marrying someone who treats their spouse like a joke for their friends is the mistake. Last night was just the wake-up call. She changed tactics again, trying to sound practical. Look, even if you want space, you can't just kick me out with nowhere to go. I need time to figure things out. You should have figured things out before you decided to end our marriage for laughs. Where am I supposed to live? My mother won't even talk to me after what happened with the credit cards. That sounds like a you problem. Her mask finally slipped completely. You can't just destroy my life because your feelings got hurt. I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply accepting the reality you created. You wanted to be single and dramatic for your friends. Congratulations, you got your wish. This is ridiculous. You know I didn't really want a divorce. What I know is that when given the choice between respecting your husband and entertaining your friends, you chose entertainment. That tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. She grabbed my arm as I walked toward the house. I won't sign any papers. You can't force me to get divorced. I turned to face her directly. Actually, I can. It's called irreconcilable differences. Your public announcement last night, with witnesses, makes this pretty straightforward. You're bluffing. Try me. I pulled out my phone and showed her the lawyer's contact information in my recent calls. I've already filed the initial paperwork. You'll be served within 48 hours. Her confidence crumbled completely. You can't be serious. Over one stupid night. One stupid night where you publicly humiliated your husband for entertainment. Yeah, I'm serious about that. But I love you. You love the lifestyle I provided. You love having someone to pay your bills while you work 15 hours a week. You love having someone to make fun of with your friends. You don't love me. She stood there speechless as I walked into the house and closed the door. Through the window, I watched her sit in her car for 20 minutes, probably calling her friends for advice. But her friends had already gotten their entertainment. Now they'd move on to the next drama, and she'd be left dealing with the consequences of treating her marriage like a reality show. My phone buzzed with a text from the attorney. The papers would be ready tomorrow morning. The divorce papers were served at her retail job 3 days later. I wasn't there to see it, but word travels fast in a small town. By the time I stopped by the hardware store that afternoon, the cashier was giving me sympathetic looks. Heard you're going through a rough patch, he said while ringing up my purchase. My wife mentioned something about drama at girls' night. Just taking care of some overdue business. I replied, keeping it simple. The truth was starting to spread through our social circle, and it wasn't the version she'd been trying to sell. Her friends from that night were apparently less supportive than she'd expected. I ran into one of them at the grocery store. She approached me hesitantly while I was picking out produce. Hey, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about what happened the other night. That was really uncomfortable for everyone. I appreciate that. For what it's worth, most of us thought she went way too far. Nobody knew she was going to put you on speaker like that. But nobody stopped her either. She looked genuinely embarrassed. You're right. We should have. It just happened so fast. And then when you hung up, she started crying and saying she didn't mean it. Interesting. She seemed pretty confident when she was performing for you all. That's just it though. It felt like a performance. Like she was trying to outdrama everyone else's relationship problems. I nodded and continued shopping. The conversation told me everything I needed to know. Even her own friends recognized the situation for what it was. Later that week, I got a call from my brother-in-law, her sister's husband. Man, what the hell happened? She's been calling my wife nonstop, crying about how you've lost your mind. She announced our divorce publicly for entertainment. I took her seriously. Now she's upset that there are consequences. Wait, she actually said she wanted a divorce. Word for word, we're done forever. This marriage is over. On speakerphone, in front of witnesses. He was quiet for a moment. And now she's saying you're overreacting? That's the current story, yeah. Jesus. My wife's been feeling bad for her, but if that's what really happened, it is. I have nothing to gain by lying about it. After that call, her sister stopped returning her messages. The family support she was counting on started evaporating as people heard the actual story. Her mother finally called me directly, using a different number I hadn't blocked yet. "I need to understand what happened," she said, sounding exhausted. "She's been staying here for a week, crying constantly, saying you've turned everyone against her." "I haven't said anything that isn't true. She ended our marriage publicly. I accepted it, and now she wants to pretend it never happened." "But surely you can work this out?" "Young people say things they don't mean all the time." She's 32 years old. That's old enough to be accountable for her words and actions. She made a mistake. She made a choice. A very public, very deliberate choice to humiliate her husband for her friends' entertainment. There was a long pause. "What do you want from her?" "Nothing. I want her to live with the consequences of her decision and stop trying to manipulate everyone into believing she's the victim here. She's my daughter. I have to help her." "That's your choice. But helping her avoid accountability isn't actually helping her." The call ended shortly after that, but I could tell even her mother was starting to see through the victim act. The social isolation was hitting her hard. Her work friends were avoiding the drama. Her girls' night group was uncomfortable around her, and her family was asking uncomfortable questions. Meanwhile, my life was improving daily. I'd started going to the gym again, something I'd stopped doing because she always complained about the time it took. I was sleeping better, eating better, and generally feeling more like myself than I had in years. People in town were treating me with more respect too. Word had gotten out about how I'd handled the situation, and the consensus seemed to be that I'd done the right thing. At the bank, the teller mentioned that several people had asked about me. "They're saying you handled a difficult situation with a lot of class." "I just took someone at their word," I replied. "Well, it's refreshing to see someone who doesn't put up with disrespect." "Good for you." That weekend, I saw her at the mall where she worked. She looked tired and stressed, probably from dealing with the reality of supporting herself on a part-time retail salary. She saw me and started walking over, but I simply nodded politely and continued on my way. No drama, no conversation, just basic courtesy. I heard later that she'd broken down crying at work after that encounter, but that wasn't my responsibility anymore. She'd wanted to be single and dramatic. Now she was getting exactly what she'd asked for. 2 weeks later, I was having lunch at our usual Sunday spot downtown when she walked in. But this wasn't a coincidence. She'd clearly planned this. She was dressed to impress, had done her hair, and was putting on her most charming smile as she approached my table. What made it obvious was the timing. She'd waited until the restaurant was packed with the after-church crowd. People we both knew were scattered throughout the dining room. "What a surprise seeing you here," she said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Mind if I sit down?" I gestured to the empty chair across from me. "It's a free country." She sat down and immediately launched into her performance. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few weeks, and I realize how much I've missed you." Several people were already watching our table. She was banking on social pressure and public sentiment to force some kind of reconciliation scene. "Have you now?" I took a sip of my coffee and waited. "Yes, and I think we should try to work things out. What happened that night was a huge mistake, and I've learned from it." Her voice was getting louder, more emotional. The couple at the next table was openly staring now. "I love you so much, and I know we can get past this if we just try. Please, don't throw away 7 years of marriage over one bad night." The tears started flowing right on cue. She was really putting on a show, probably hoping that public pressure would make me look like the bad guy if I didn't respond positively. I set down my coffee and looked directly at her. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly." My voice was calm but clear enough for anyone listening to hear. "You want to reconcile with the man you publicly announced you were divorcing forever? The man whose marriage you ended for entertainment value in front of a room full of witnesses?" Her face started to flush. This wasn't going the way she'd planned. "That was a mistake," she said, her voice getting smaller. "No, a mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. What you did was make a deliberate choice to humiliate your husband for laughs. There's a difference." The restaurant had gotten noticeably quieter. People were definitely listening now. "Please, just give us another chance. I promise I'll never do anything like that again. Right? Just like you promised to love and honor me when we got married." How'd that work out? She was trapped. In trying to manipulate the situation with public pressure, she'd given me the perfect opportunity to let everyone hear exactly what had happened. "You can't be serious about ending our marriage over this." "I'm not ending anything. You already did that. Remember? We're done forever. This marriage is over. Those were your exact words. I just had the courtesy to believe you. She looked around desperately, realizing that the public support she was counting on wasn't materializing. People weren't seeing a wronged woman begging for forgiveness. They were seeing someone who'd publicly destroyed her marriage and was now trying to manipulate her way back in. But I was drinking. People say things they don't mean when they're drinking. So you're saying alcohol makes you disrespect your husband? That's supposed to reassure me? She started crying harder, but it felt calculated and desperate. Please don't do this to me. I can't survive without you. You should have thought about that before you decided our marriage was comedy material for your friends. I stood up and left money on the table for my meal. I hope you find whatever it is you're actually looking for, but it's not going to be with me. As I walked toward the door, I could hear her crying behind me. But I also heard something else, whispered conversations at other tables. Not sympathetic ones. Did she really announce their divorce at a party? That's terrible. Poor guy. Who does that to their husband? By the time I reached the parking lot, she'd followed me outside. Away from the audience, her demeanor changed completely. You bastard. You made me look like an idiot in there. You made yourself look like an idiot. I just answered your questions honestly. Nobody's going to want anything to do with me after this. That's not my problem. You created this situation. I hate you. She screamed, loud enough for people walking to their cars to hear. And there's the real you, I said calmly. The one who hates her husband when she doesn't get her way. Thank God I don't have to live with that anymore. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot. In trying to force a public reconciliation, she'd instead given me the perfect platform to set the record straight about what had actually happened. Her last desperate gambit had backfired completely. Now everyone in town knew the full story, and she'd lost what little sympathy she might have had left. The game was over, and she'd played herself. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. I sat in my lawyer's office signing the last of the paperwork, feeling nothing but relief. Clean separation, he said, sliding the documents across his desk. She gets her personal belongings and whatever was in her individual accounts. You keep the house, both vehicles, and all other assets. No alimony, no shared debts. And she agreed to all of this. Eventually, her attorney advised her that fighting it would be expensive and futile, especially given the circumstances of how the marriage ended. I walked out of that office a free man in every sense of the word. The weight I'd been carrying for years was completely gone. My ex-wife's life had taken a very different trajectory. Without access to my income, she'd been forced to find full-time work. Last I heard, she was working 2 jobs just to afford a studio apartment across town. Her mother had grown tired of supporting her and given her an ultimatum about becoming self-sufficient. The social consequences had been lasting too. Her girls' night group had quietly excluded her from future gatherings. Nobody wanted to be around someone who treated their personal relationships like entertainment for others. Trust, once broken in that way, doesn't easily repair itself. I'd seen her a few times around town, always from a distance. She looked tired, stressed, and significantly older than her 32 years. The reality of supporting herself without a safety net had hit her hard. Meanwhile, my life had completely transformed. I'd lost 15 pounds at the gym, started eating better, and was sleeping through the night for the first time in years. The constant tension that had become normal in my marriage was completely gone. I'd also reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during the marriage. Guys from work who'd stopped inviting me places because she'd always found reasons why I couldn't go. Old college buddies who'd given up trying to maintain friendships with someone whose wife made every gathering uncomfortable with her need for attention and drama. The house felt different too. Peaceful. I could watch what I wanted on TV, eat dinner when I was hungry, and enjoy my weekends without walking into emotional landmines or manufactured drama. Financial stress had disappeared overnight. Without her shopping habits, spa treatments, and expensive girls' nights, I was saving more money than I ever had. I'd even started looking at vacation destinations, something I hadn't been able to afford when I was supporting 2 people on one income. 6 months after that night, I ran into one of her former friends at the coffee shop downtown. She approached me hesitantly. "I heard the divorce went through," she said. "I just wanted you to know that we all felt terrible about that night. We should have stopped her. Water under the bridge," I replied. "But I appreciate you saying that. For what it's worth, I think you handled everything with a lot of class." Most guys would have made it ugly. No point in that. She showed me who she really was, and I believed her. Everything after that was just paperwork. She nodded thoughtfully. She's been reaching out to some of us, trying to rebuild friendships, but it's hard to trust someone after something like that. That's understandable. Are you doing okay? You look really good. I was doing better than okay. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Yeah, I'm doing great actually. And I meant it. That night, when she'd announced our marriage was over forever, had been the best thing that ever happened to me. She'd freed me from a relationship I hadn't even realized had become toxic. Her attempt to humiliate me for entertainment had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. Instead of getting laughs from her friends, she'd lost her marriage, her financial security, her social circle, and her family's respect. But more importantly, she'd given me my life back. I'd learned something valuable about respect, boundaries, and self-worth. When someone shows you they don't value you, believe them the first time. Don't wait for them to prove it over and over again. As I drove home that evening, I felt grateful. Grateful for her honesty that night, even if she hadn't intended it to be honest. Grateful for the courage to take her at her word. And grateful for the chance to build a better life without someone who saw my dignity as negotiable. She'd wanted drama and entertainment. Instead, she'd given me freedom and peace. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well.